All right. Good morning, everybody. We'll see if Yvonne can make it through our talk today without crying. I think she probably can't.
I can't.
The questions I opened with today are kind of like the dichotomy of emotions right now as a parent. Is your senior driving you crazy? And are you an emotional wreck of the thought of them leaving? I'm going to stop sharing so that we can all see each other. So, because this is such a weird time, both Yvonne and I are parents of seniors, and our seniors are our oldest children. So we have not gone through this before. Some parents may, be like, gone through this, it's fine. But this is the first time for both of us. And, I've mentioned before that senioritis is a real phenomenon. It's not, we talk about it in education, but it is something that is absolutely something that is truly a real thing. And, seniors can, I think Yvonne, you just they can be so over it right now with stuff. I had a conversation with my daughter, her school also is starting cohorts and starting sports up again. So my daughter has been going to her wrestling practices. And she's like, Mom, they're driving me crazy, all of the drama. And she's like, God, I'm just so and she was complaining about it. And I'm like, Hannah, I don't know if it's necessarily what's happening right now, or you're just kind of over this. You are at the point that you're looking on I'm about to be done. And especially since it's underclassmen that have little petty fights, and she's just like, I'm done with all of you. And so seniors right now can very much they can be fearful about what's coming. They can also, and then the very next minute be like, no, I know everything in the world, and I am you can't tell me any different because I know everything, and I'm about to be an adult, especially if they've already turned 18 at this point. I have another month until my daughter turns 18, but if they are legally an adult, I think they get that kind of oh, I'm done.
That's been the hardest part of this year, I think, is that I have an adult, but he's not acting like one. So how do I step in?
Yeah. But then sometimes they surprise you and totally act like an adult. Like my daughter the other day, she's like, oh, I just did, I was just an adult. I signed myself up to be alerted when I can get a vaccine. And I was like, whoa, look at you. Good job. But at the same time, they are potentially about to leave the house. I mean, I actually feel like I'm lucky my daughter is going to go to community college, so she's staying home. But it is she and I went and we were driving around and we were looking at community colleges just this past weekend. And we were talking about her life next year and getting herself to school, and what she's going to be working, and it just really struck me that it's going to be very different. Even though she's still at home, I'm going to have an adult living in the house. She's going to have her life, whereas now as a parent I feel like I'm staying on top of her school and doing all that stuff. I'm not going to be doing that next year. And so
that's interesting that you say that, because I feel like my situation with my son going away is that instant, okay, it happens and then it's done and I kind of move forward. But yours is going to be kind of an ongoing transition of an adult living in the house. How do you parent differently? You're not checking her school loop anymore. That's going to be a tough one. I didn't even think about it.
Right. And it's things I mean, granted, in the past year, there's been a pandemic, so it's not like she's been going out all that much anyway, but a college student, you don't have a curfew on a college student, right? Even though they're still living at home. And so there's just, I don't know. I mean, she's not one that I think is going to be going out a ton anyway. She tends to be much more of a homebody. But there's going to be this kind of weird weirdness about it. So Yvonne, tell me how you're struggling right
Yeah.
now.
So, I mean, senioritis, I think I was reading something and it was basically saying like mental health professionals are saying that this is going to be like the worst senioritis on record. And I've stated this before that usually my clients are freshmen. This entire year has been like me and seniors and them being checked out early on in the year. I mean, like September, October. And so this has kind of been an ongoing thing. My son got accepted into college. He finally finalized that he'll go to San Francisco State. So I know I'm crying like he's going to Notre Dame, but like it's still sad for me. And where was I going with this? Oh, so he's always been an A and B student. This year, I know he was depressed. I know he was in a slump. I know it was hard for him, but to get phone calls from my colleagues essentially that my kid had 3 Fs most of first semester and the beginning of this semester. And I'm like freaking out that he's going to get his college acceptance rescinded. He's going to flunk. Like I was worried about college and now here I am like worried about graduation. Like, are we going to get through high school? So thankfully baseball started up and that was a motivating factor because he almost didn't make the cut for grades and that was a big deal for him. So he's floating around C's and D's right now, which I didn't ever think I'd be excited about, but I kind of am. So for me, senioritis is so real. But I think what you said, Judy, about like having an adult in the house, it's like, how much can I step in? How much can I push him and tell him what to do? Or do I just, like in our book, do I let him fail? And a lot of the definitions of senioritis, they are like kind of a joke, right? Like I have this definition, it's like a crippling disease that strikes high school seniors. Symptoms include laziness, over excessive wearing of sweatpants, features a lack of studying, repeated absences, and a generally dismissive attitude. The only known cure is graduation. And it was kind of like silly, but I'm like, oh my, this is real. I don't know how many of you know that it is a real phenomenon. Even as an employee at a school, after spring break, I get a little checked out. It's hard to stay focused. And so it is something real. Things I've been hearing lately from students are, deadlines used to give me anxiety. And now, 11:59 comes and I don't really care, and that's coming from students who are really engaged in school and do really well. Students saying, why does my attendance matter? This class doesn't matter. I don't need it for graduation. This class doesn't even count. I'm hearing every day, like I have no motivation. I've always been a procrastinator, but now I'm like really, really pushing the limits. And so, I was kind of trying to look into the root of like, what causes this? Senior year for me was a really, really bad year. And I think a lot of it had to do with, you have this routine for 13 years. You get up, you go to school, you take the classes you're supposed to. And I almost feel like after graduation, if you don't have a solid plan, especially, it's kind of just like this abyss you fall into and you're just kind of floating and you don't really know like what direction to go in. And it can be really scary. So I think a lot of times, seniors almost self-sabotage. Like I feel like there's been a few instances where my son's kind of self-sabotage, like, I don't know, maybe like hanging on to being in high school. Other reasons could be like boredom. Like they've been in this pattern for 13 years. It's like they like Hannah, she's so over it, right? Like she's just over the drama of it, over the classes. But I think mainly it really is just burnout. When you are stressed for such a prolonged amount of time, it's like at some point your brain and your body are like, we're done. And I think a lot of our seniors are, especially this year with the pandemic, they're just done. And so, we have to think about like these kids have worked so hard, and then we pile on the fact that they've been stuck in their house with us for a year. And it's so easy to see why they might be checked out right now, why they might be, not caring so much anymore. The one thing my son keeps saying is like, why does this even matter? Why do I even have to do this? He has some very sweet teachers who I think might be feeding into it like, oh, just do this and you'll be fine, you'll pass. And so I think he's got that going on too, but just like doesn't care at all.
Yeah, I can, the perspective of the teacher, because when I was teaching, I taught seniors. I was a government economics teacher. So this was something that I dealt with as a teacher. And I just remember this time of year, like just begging my students, you guys just do this assignment, or like, just do it. Like, just hold on, like, don't stop yet. Because we're not, it's not time to stop. Like, we're not, we're not there yet. Hey, Blossom. So it's, and like seeing it as a parent though, with my kid, like, I'm like, Hannah, have you done any homework? Like, let's do some homework. Let's like get some stuff turned in. And she's like, yeah, it's, and she definitely, like, I honestly, like, I never thought she would be a kid that like, I don't need that class for graduation. It doesn't matter, but we are so there. And as a parent, I've learned like all the stuff that we've talked about this year, especially the accepting. I have had to really like use those skills and accept that her statistics class does not matter. She doesn't need it for graduation. It's fine. She needs to pass English and she needs to pass economics. And those are the classes she needs to pass. And that's what I'm going to worry about. And
we don't have any more F's anymore, but except in his art class. And I'm like, I'm going to let that one slide. I feel bad for the teacher, but
I'm going to let this go. And I think that that's what we need to do as parents to maintain our own sanity, because, it can be very frustrating to care so much and they just aren't there. And so you're fighting them, with that.
Absolutely. So I think like leading into like, okay, so what do you do as a parent? Like, how much control do we really have? And so I just have like a general guideline of like what we should do. And I'm doing my best to already do these, but I never thought I'd be celebrating a D. I took him to McDonald's. He wanted chicken McNuggets when he got a D, and I was like, let's go. So keep the routines going. It has to be structure. Right now, everything is so just kind of chaotic, and just maintaining that structure for them. I kind of struggle with the fact of like, do I go into my 18-year-old's room and wake him up for school, or do I let him miss class? So I'm like, no, I'm just going to keep going with what I've been doing. I'm going to keep waking him up. I'm encouraging him to stay organized. He's a disaster. His room's a disaster. But when it comes to like his desk area, he's actually been really good. And I've kind of been on him about that. But again, it's weird, right? He's like an adult now. And I'm telling him, I'm like kind of micromanaging him, but I feel like he can't really manage himself right now. I also want to really give him time to just like celebrate this really awesome time. I mean, it's a huge accomplishment. He's been through 13 years of school. I'm excited. We're celebrating. So giving him the space to be excited about it, while also, you think about like how many times we go into our kids' room and ask them, are you done with your work? Did you finish what Mr. So-and-so assigned you? And how many times do we actually go in and be like, hey, I'm so excited that you've come this far. You're doing a great job. I don't do that very often. And that's something that I'm really trying to implement, especially in these last few weeks, because I think he already feels the pressure, and the more I put on him, the more he's going to shut down. You said you went on a college tour this weekend. That was kind of one of my things, is like finalizing college stuff and giving them something to work towards. This weekend we're, going up to San Francisco. We're going to spend the night Friday night. We're going to walk around the campus, and almost like a reminder of like, this is why you have to finish, because this is the next step. So finalizing those plans, kind of reminding them of those plans, and then giving them time to rest and recharge. I'm not expecting A's anymore. I know some kids have gotten into schools that are going to require them to maintain that. Fortunately, mine did not. So making sure that they have time to just get some rest, stay active, stay healthy, keep eating. That's been the hardest thing for him this year, is like eating, which is strange to me because I know what I'm going to eat 3 days from now. So making sure that he eats and that he's healthy. And then the last one I have is just reaching out to people who get it, counselors, people who graduated, his peers that are feeling the same way, just being connected and knowing that he's not alone, and kind of dragging his feet and being a little bit stuck right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it was interesting, like going and looking at, we didn't actually do a formal tour because the schools are actually closed. We just walked around the campus, even though they had all these signs up closed to the public. I was like, it was Sunday. I'm like, there's nobody here. It's fine. And, we went and we looked at Foothill and we looked at College of San Mateo because, we live up on the peninsula, and I liked Foothill better. Like I was just like, oh, I think I like this one. She liked College of San Mateo better. And that was like, again, my acceptance skills, like, okay, like I'm just, this is your decision. And so,
do we have any parents here of seniors? Because this is gonna come up for you. I know Blasa, are you able to put your mic on and share a little bit about what's going on?
Hi, good morning, everyone. So yeah, I have a senior right now, and I don't remember going through all of these emotions with my son. I think he was just ready to, spread his wings and fly. And also that was 10 years ago. But now with my daughter, it's just like a series of emotions, right? And then also maybe learning from the mistakes I made with my son and just being very like, it's all up to you, whatever you decide. I'm just here. I just want you to have options, but you decide where you're going to go. With my son, I really pushed him to go away to school, and he ended up not doing that and regrets it now. I just want to point that part out. And so with Ileana, she's so indecisive. That's kind of something she's always just struggled with, and I'm not that way. So I'm like, okay, babe, we need to make a decision. Like,
so she's not decided yet.
No, she hasn't decided yet. And May 1st is like right around the corner, right?
Is there a top two at least?
Yeah, there's a top two, okay. But they're two totally different options. One is here in San Jose State, the other one's Monterey. And so it's just, helping her with her anxieties and her fears of being so far away from home. I'm like, babe, it's like an hour drive, but okay. And then also just hiding all of my feelings of wanting her just to stay right here in my little pocket all the time. So yeah, it's been an emotional year. And I think too, adding on to all of that, our seniors not being able to celebrate the way every other class has been able to, right? Like we built this up so much for 13 years and now we're here and there's nothing. And so we do try to make, little special moments for her. Try to follow up with, try to follow some of the same traditions, but it's not the same. She's like, I'm supposed to be stressing out with my friends about this, not with you, Mom. And, and so she just really misses that, all of that. Of course, all of our kids do that. We're all in the same boat.
I kind of feel like we got an extra bad dose because our kids have been in our house with us all day, every day for a year. And then for him to just like, we'll just go.
Yeah, and it's made her, I don't know about yours, but it's made mine a lot. I mean, mine has always been very attached. We always call her my backpack because everywhere I go, she goes. But now it's even worse. Like she just does not, I come to work to the office and she calls me like, when are you coming home? Like 5 o'clock.
Yep.
Why so long? Can I come see you? Can I come bring you food? And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. I always assumed that my daughter would go away to college. Like that was just like, that was always a thing. And then this fall, she didn't even she barely applied to some CSUs, but she was like, Mom, I want to go to community college and stay home. I am not ready to leave. And I really feel like a lot of that was just this past year. I mean, granted, she definitely had some mental health stuff going on, but I feel like if we weren't stuck at home, like it would have been a different thing. And so, yeah.
I think that heightened anxiety has left them all a little bit clingier. Like, my 18-year-old jumps in my bed to watch movies when I get home from work, like he's definitely clingy and I'm embracing it now. Before I'd be annoyed, but now, moving into our talk about empty nest, like I am just like embracing every single moment. And, my younger sons keep saying, we're still here, right, Mom? And I'm like, I know.
It's not the same. It's not the same. Like, and my youngest is my husband's, little mini me. So I'm like, sometimes when Ileana's not home and it's just the three of us and they're talking like their most boring talk ever, because they're the exact same person. I'm like, this is going to be my life for the next year, you know?
Totally. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I mean, with senioritis, it's kind of like that balance of like, I'm so frustrated with him, but I just want to hug him. Like, I'm so like all over the place. My poor family is just like, wow, you're taking care of the mental health of a whole school. I'm like, I know I'm a disaster right now. I can't do this. So I'm going to move into our empty nest. You know, it's going to be tough. I was looking through articles, and the funny thing about all the articles is they really, I don't know if they're trying to brainwash us, but they're talking about like the 50 reasons why empty nest is like the best thing ever, you know, and I'm not there yet. I'm still kind of in this grieving phase of like life changing. I feel like there's like this clock ticking, like I have all these experiences to teach him. I have all these things he needs to learn before he goes. I have all these I mean, this poor kid, I'm like completely smothering him. I'm like popping in his room, like I'm cheering at the baseball game. He's probably just like ready to go. But, you know, again, his plan is to go to San Francisco. It's not that far. In my mind, it's a million miles away. I don't get to see him every morning. I'm a worrier by nature about my kids. And so the thought of like not knowing what time he got home or if he's eating enough, like that's kind of the stuff that's going through my head. But these are kind of the thoughts, and I don't know if Bless or Ginny or anybody else has had these, but I'm getting a lot of like reminiscing, right? Like I'm watching these videos of him when he's a baby and I can't stop thinking of him that way. And I just started having all these kind of thoughts about the past 18 years. And I kind of was jotting them down as they were popping up at, 2:00 in the morning last night. And I'm thinking, did I prepare him enough for reality? Should I have pushed him harder? Did I push him too hard? What does he think about the way that I parented him? Does he think I did a good job? Does he feel supported? Is he going to come back? Is he going to meet a girl up there that lives somewhere far away? Did I listen to him enough? Did I put my phone down enough? Did I enjoy all the moments I had, or was I too distracted by my life? Is he going to come back? Does he think that I cared more about his grades than I cared about him? Did I ask him enough how he's doing? Like, these are all the things that are coming up for me. He's a total mama's boy. I was a stay-at-home mom for 11 years with him. I mean, we were just the two of us. We lived across the country. We went through a lot of stuff together. And so total mama's boy, which is fantastic. But my poor husband, lately, I've been so on him of like, you have 3 months to connect with him. You have 3 months to like make this impact where you're so close that he wants to come home, because if he doesn't want to come home, it's your fault and I'm never going to forgive you. Like, I'm literally like that right now. Like, we only have so much time. And so my husband is kind of like, you're the one that always talks about mindfulness and being in the moment. And I feel like you're really jumping ahead. I'm like, I think you're totally right. Like, so I keep giving him suggestions of like how to bond with him. And he's like, you have to understand that we have our own relationship and he's going to come back. Like, he doesn't realize how good he has it right now. He still needs us. He's still, a kiddo, it's going to be okay. But I think that's, like, oh, this is a silly example, but he had his last home opener baseball game yesterday. He was a starting pitcher. And it's a big deal. And we can only invite 2 people because of the pandemic. And my husband's like, well, I have to do a building tour at work. And I literally was like, you will go to this game. You will cancel that meeting. This is so important. What if you don't go and then he never comes home because he's so mad about it?
Oh my God.
And my husband like cancels the meeting and goes, and it's fine. But like, he's like, you need to relax. So I'm going to pause right there. I don't know how you guys are feeling right now about this. I know, Ginny, your nest is changing.
I mean, and I was listening to you, Yvonne, because I haven't been experiencing that. And I'm wondering if, we've talked a lot when we, have these conversations about the difference between raising a girl and a boy. And I was thinking about like, if it were my son, I actually feel like I would probably be a little bit more like, oh God, he's leaving and he's never coming back. But like, I don't feel like with my daughter that she's going anywhere. I mean, honestly, my daughter and I are very, very close. And I just don't see that changing. Like, even if she weren't living at home, like, she's totally the type, like, she would call me all the time and be like, guess what happened? And, and so I just don't feel like I am losing that. Like, and then granted, she's not moving out, but even like, she will. I mean, I'm actually hoping that she's only home for another year, and then she like does actually go to a 4-year, and I do actually really want her to go away to college. That's what I struggle with, because I went away to college and it was such a great experience for me to really discover myself. And she and I are so similar, and I see how like quiet and reserved she can be, and really shy. And going away to college was something that like really taught me how to break out of my shell and not be afraid of things. And I want that for her. But I forgot where I was going on, what
Just
direction
how
I was
boys and
going with
girls are
this.
different.
Yeah, so I just feel like with my son, I just feel like he would just like, disappear and like, like kind of like go off and just do his thing. And I guess I see that with my brother, with like how he and I, like, I'm still like, I live a block away from my parents. I see my parents all the time. Like, like I'm very much part of my life. Whereas my brother, we see him several times a year, and so I just.
Well, it's true. Like my husband's parents, I'm like, we need to go see your mom. It's been a week. And he's like, oh yeah. Like, it's not like the same as like my mom. I'm like, we're like hanging out all the time. And I'm afraid that he's gonna, everybody always says like, oh, your daughters stay close to home and your sons go away. And, they always get to spend Christmas at their in-laws, party. So I'm even like neurotic enough right now that I'm like, tell whatever girlfriend you make that I do a really good Christmas and I get really good presents. Like, he's like, Mom, I'm not even talking to anyone. But maybe it is different. What about you, Blasa? Because you have a son already that went away. Is it different? Are we on to something?
Well, I hate to say you're right, but I do think that you might be right. I think that, I mean, maybe I'm just using also my situation, right? Like my husband came to San Jose, met me, has not returned back to LA ever since. And so, and here me, I'm like, same like you, Yvonne, 10 minutes away from my mama and super close to her still. So yeah, I definitely think that there's a difference between that fear too. And then also, I guess in some ways, I feel like my daughter's a little more prepared. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I know it's totally stereotyping, right? But, sometimes my son did things that were kind of like really dingy. And I'm like, son, like you have a lot of academic smarts, but not a lot of street smarts. And Ileana, I feel like she'll just figure it out. She's a little more like common sense. So she just will figure it out. So she has to go do something. At this age, I worried a lot more about the kind of like not great choices my son was making compared to what my daughter is doing. I feel like she thinks things through a little bit more. He is a little more reckless and like, I can do what I want, So yeah, I do think there's definitely that difference there.
That's a good point. Like, my mom was always like kind of like served the kids and I always kind of did that. And so now I have an 18-year-old that will like literally follow me around with a pack of ham and a loaf of bread, like, Mom. So then I'm like, dude, you put the bread to get, and so then I start thinking like, is he gonna starve? Like, already looking into the meal plans, like all these things that my niece who's 18, she's been putting a sandwich together for my son since she was like 5 years old, right? So just those little things, I think, yeah, definitely a gender difference, in our experiences. But I think just that maybe that's what the difference is like for me, it feels like almost like a final goodbye. Like, are you ever, I don't know what's gonna happen, and I just have to trust that it's the best for him. But I worry that my sadness about it, like I don't want that to deter him or make him feel bad, because I am excited. Like I'm excited to see all the work I put in like come to fruition and see him grow and make good choices. And like you said before, Jenny, sometimes your kids surprise you, like, you did what by yourself?
Yeah.
even like the medical clearance for baseball, like he did all that. And I'm like, I didn't even know you knew your Kaiser number. Like, good job. That was kind of cool to watch. So I'm hoping that he'll actually call and text me and tell me what's going on so I can see, how he's doing. But, I think it started this year with like, you get the thing in the mail for like senior pictures. And it was like all these little triggers have just kind of brought me to April, where it's all just coming to a close. And like Blasa said, it's like we don't have the opportunity to celebrate the way we want to, but how do we make it special nonetheless?
Yeah.
That's a tough one. And for parents who don't have seniors yet, like, man, I just keep having these like thoughts and regrets of like, I wish I would have done this. And we're always going to have that in life, but my advice is really just, gosh, enjoy those moments, enjoy those special moments, because it's so cliche, but they fly by. And yes, I still have 2 kids left in the house, but enjoy it. And when you were going to go in and harp on them about their grades, like, remember that they're people too, and that's not necessarily going to be helpful.
Yeah, I keep thinking about when I went away to college and my parents moved me into the dorm, and I think my dad was there. Like, my mom was definitely there. I totally remember my mom. And I think my dad was there too, but I like, that's more fuzzy. But I just remember like, like thinking that it was going to be emotional when they say goodbye, and it wasn't. But probably because I was nervous about like, oh God, they're leaving, and then like I'm going to be by myself here. And then like the nerves of like, I think maybe I had met my roommate, but like it was that day, like I just met her. So now like I'm like living in this room that's the size of a closet with this like stranger, and that's weird. And like, so I'm like super nervous, and I think my parents were nervous, and we were just super cranky with each other that day. And it was like, they were like, okay, we're going to the airport. And I'm like, all right, bye. See you at Christmas. And it was just like, we didn't have this emotional, and my mom and I have talked about that after, like, that we were actually glad that we were cranky with each other, because it was like, it kind of made it easier that, that saying goodbye and like letting that go. So, families that have kids that are actually like literally moving away and you're not going to see them all. Because I went to college in Texas. Like my parents could not see me. I mean, I think I did actually end up coming home for Thanksgiving, but it was August to Thanksgiving before I was home. So yeah.
I'm just trying to read this.
I know. 2 says, this is my first teen in my house. I do not know how to deal with it. She's usually an A student, will finish good, but her homework and tests well. But lately I've noticed she started ignoring all homework, not good in tests, just wanting to do whatever she wants. And when we discuss it, she starts to blame to right, left, teachers, computers, parents. Scary part is she's easy to get angry. Teenage behavior stress.
To what grade is your daughter in? You know, 10th graders this year, my heart breaks for them. They haven't had a complete year on campus. It's been a lot. I think when you feel disconnected from the campus, I think it makes it even more difficult to engage. And so what I'm reading here, it's so hard because we're not even really diagnosing a lot of kids right now with depression because everybody's kind of in that state of mind right now. So it's really hard to differentiate, what's related to school, what's related to depression. What I would do, honestly, is keep in mind that, and I tell this all the time, is I have 2,200 students at school that would love to have a conversation with me and 3 at home that do not. And so giving our kids the space to talk to somebody else about it could be helpful. If you shoot me an email, I would love to check in on your kiddo. Because again, sometimes it's something they don't even know is happening, and anything coming from parents, especially when you're already in a not good headspace, is just nagging and not helpful from their perspective. And so that's what I would suggest, especially if you're worried, because it could be regular behavior. It could have something to do with the pandemic, it says, should I trust her to work without, it depends. I mean, 10th grade, she's still pretty young, and, we have to, when we feel like they're not capable of doing these things, it's time to step in. So I would definitely, if you would like, I would love to just meet and figure that out, because it's kind of a hard question to ask without a lot more information. You have anything, Ginny?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, kids lashing out in anger, I would say that probably is stress. I think that's fairly common.
Mm-hmm.
Especially at the end of a school year, it is stressful. I'm glad that she's on sports. You just put that in the chat that she's in sports. I think that actually will help a lot. I've been talking to teachers and our coaches, and I see it myself as a parent because my daughter is an athlete. And so she started, she's wrestling. They're actually not going to have any competition or anything, but just going to practices and like having that social interaction, and like the fact that she's getting regular physical exercise again, even though we've talked about that, this whole time of the pandemic, and like encouraging our kids to exercise and how difficult that's been because they've really have turned into slugs.
Sports are huge. Sports are huge right now for mood. I've seen my kid go from like, I think I need to call the psychiatrist, to like laughing and feeling like excited about things again. So I'm glad to hear that she's
definitely. So I think it is really, really important. So stress is a thing at the end of, and when kids are stressed out and their parents, we as parents have the best of intentions and we just want to help, but that doesn't always come across.
It just comes out as annoying to kids, honestly. Like,
yeah. So I think one thing that I would suggest when you're talking to your kid, and this is actually leading in, I was going to introduce our topic for next week. Next week we're going to talk about family communication. Yvonne, next week we're talking about family communication. Yeah. And I don't think I like confirmed that with you. But that's when you're talking to your kids, like use like the tone of voice and your demeanor, like definitely, like even though you may be irritated with them, try to hide that, or like you might be worried about it, like try to hide that and just come at it with a gentle tone, gentle demeanor, conversational, and that I think even when you think that they are doing something that's bad, and they may come at you with like, oh, I don't care about this, or I don't want to do this, and you want to like get angry with it, try not to, and try to like, okay, well, let's talk about that. What's going on? Why do you feel that way? And because when you come at it with like, I don't know why you're acting like this. You were always a straight A student before, and now you're not. What's going on? Like, I don't even know who you are anymore. They just get super defensive and will shut down, and they're going to shut down that conversation real fast, and they're not going to engage. And so, we'll have more advice about this next week. But it's kind of like a little intro.
Yeah. I know that question made me kind of reminded me of all the hard stuff we've gone through in high school. And so it's weird to go from that to feeling sad about it being over. So I promise you too, it will eventually get to that point where it feels sad to not be going through it anymore. But I definitely feel your pain on this one, and we'll definitely connect afterwards. I wanted to pause a minute and do this kind of exercise, if you will. It doesn't matter if you're a parent of a senior or not, but I was thinking about life outside of work for me, and what percentage of my life is dedicated to either thinking about my kids, caring for my kids, or spending time with my kids. And so I kind of compiled this like idea. So think about your day, take work out of it, and just whatever leftover time you have, or if you're a stay-at-home parent, factor in the whole day. But I thought about, like, I get up in the morning, I wonder if they're awake. They jump on my bed and they say good morning. I make them breakfast. I make sure they're logged in for class. During the school day, I make them lunch. I do snacks. We take a walk at lunch. One of them will usually go with me to Lucky to get groceries. One of them will help me with dinner. I cook for them. I clean up the mess. I make them do their chores. I make sure they eat. I take them to practice. I do doctor's appointments. You know, every day I try to spend at least 15 minutes alone with each of them. I have 3 of them. So I go through this whole list. You know, we do like meditation at night. We watch funny videos. We do laundry. We play with the animal, like all these things I do. And then I thought, well, if I were to take all of that away, what do I do? You know? So my question for you is, if you think about your extra time outside of work, what percentage of your day would you say is spent thinking about, caring about, or spending time with your kids? So I'll give you a couple of minutes to just kind of process your day.
Do we have to come up with a percentage? I'm like, wow, I'm bad at math.
You I mean,
bad at math. I'm like,
yes. Like, I mean, you could say like a percentage, or you could say like most of my time or some of my time. And there's no right or wrong. This isn't like judgment, like, oh, I care more about my kid. Nothing like that. Like, just generally speaking, what amount of time is spent on our kids? I mean, it's obviously different from when they were really little and, you know, I had to make sure they weren't eating Legos or whatever, but it's definitely still time consuming.
Yeah, I mean, I think for myself, it depends on the day. Like it's like 5 minutes ago, I got a text from my daughter. I'm doing this with all of you guys right now, and so she just texted me. So, and this one thing that, you know, with the pandemic, because I've never been somebody that has ever worked from home until now, and having the work from home, like, wow, that, you know, made, because I was there and my kids, you know, would be like, hey mom, make me lunch, or hey mom, what about this, or hey mom, you know. But then there were other days where I was working from home where I was super busy, and like I just like I had to focus on like work, and you know, I couldn't, you know, I was like, kids, just, the fridge is there. Like, you know, they probably ate chips all day, but it, you know, whatever. And my husband would be like, how are the kids today? I like distinctly remember him texting me at the end of one day, like, hey, how are the kids today? And I texted back, like, we have kids? Because I had been so busy that I had not paid attention at all. So yeah.
It depends. Like, there's some weekends where, like, this during the break, I went and hung out with my friends and my, you know, some family, left the kids here. But generally speaking, the number I gave myself was 70%. Like, most of the time I'm either thinking about them, or if I go out and have lunch with someone, I feel bad that I'm not with them. Like, it's always something ongoing. And so for me, my guess was about 70% of my time.
I would say mine's much lower. I want to say mine's like probably 30, maybe 40%.
But I'm also not running a school, so.
Right. And my kids don't go to school where I work. You have that where your kids, you know, your kids are actually like physically when you're at school, like you've meshed that, and I don't have that.
Yeah.
So
I was trying to turn my camera because literally my son was standing in this window holding up a box of crescent rolls, like I'm supposed to put them in the oven. Yeah, so I think it fluctuates, and whatever that number is, like I just keep thinking about like, gosh, I know I have 2 left, but what am I gonna do? Like, my whole life has been like their whole life, 18 years now, has been just a complete investment into them. And so when I always tell people, like, you know, be careful with retirement and be careful with emptiness. You have to have a plan. You have to have a life of yourself for yourself. And I really tried to do that. And even having friends and having things that I do is probably going to make this transition a lot easier for me. It's still like, you know, how do we fill that time? Like, when my husband and I go out to dinner, we talk about the kids. You know, what are we going to do? So that's kind of been another worry. And so I was, you know, doing a lot of reading. And like I said, it was like a lot of like the benefits of this, but there was a couple things that stood out to me of like things that you should think about, you know, as you move into this empty nest period. And the first one was, you know, how things to keep in mind. And it was how confusing the shifting of roles can be. do I text him every day? Do I let him text me? Do I expect him to come home? Do I tell him what to do? So that's something that I don't know if he and I talk about or if I just kind of let it play out naturally, but that's just something big for me that I'm like, okay, this is something I need to consider as I move into this phase. The next one is how hard it's going to be on the rest of the family. My boys are close. They adore him. Like, what my middle one was acting out this morning, like, I don't care if he goes to college, because he didn't really know how to articulate, like, hey, I'm sad that like my best friend is leaving. So managing that part of it too is something I hadn't really thought about. It was very selfish in the last month of like, what am I going to do as the mom, but just knowing that it's going to impact the rest of our families too. The third one is something to just reflect on, is how important family time is right now, and really just like basking in those moments of dinner together. Our big thing my kids love is when I take them to get a boba tea. Like that's like our outing during the pandemic. And, those are things that I'm going to really miss. And so really trying to like during those times engage in conversation and just enjoy it instead of freaking out about what's going to happen next year, just really being in that moment. And then the last one is, the reflection of how you probably weren't the parent that you thought you would be. Ginny and I joke about this all the time, but we are kind of relaxed in the parenting role. We didn't like demand a lot from our kids, and that's not really what I thought I was going to be. Like and so just being okay with that. Like I can't go back and make changes. I wish I would have done some things differently, but just, using this time to be okay with, I tell my parents all the time, my mom will ask me like, did I fail you? Or how was I? And my thought is always like, you did the best you could with what you knew at the time, and it was fine. Like I grew up, I got a career, I'm happy, and so just being okay with how things went and being able to move forward and not stay stuck in that. So those are kind of my thoughts and advice.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's interesting you talk about like, like reflecting on how you were as a parent, because I don't see like, I don't have this concept of like that time is ending.
Mm-hmm.
Like my daughter is, yes, she's going to be an adult, but I'm still her mom. Like I'm still like, she's still going to come to me. And I think it's more like you mentioned, like accepting the shifting roles, like, cause it is going to change. But and I think back, like, I think about my relationship with my own mother, and I mean, yeah, she's still my mom, but do I go to her for parental advice anymore? No, at this age, I actually probably really don't. But I certainly did, like for a good long time, it didn't end when I graduated high school. I would say it shifted certainly when I became a parent. And then, not even like I probably relied on her most as an adult right when I became a parent, because like you have this baby and you're like, oh my God. Do you remember what that was like with your first child? Like, they're just going to send me home from the hospital with this thing? What?
I have to keep it alive.
What is going on? But once you like get used to it,
Yeah. I mean, really, I think the overall message is like, man, it's painful to be a parent, and then it's painful when it changes from your original role. And really just, I don't want anyone to have regrets, but we all do. We all did the best we can. Nobody teaches us how to parent. Our culture is so, focused on education, and so that's what we do, right? And so it's only now that I'm kind of taking a step back of like, man, I should have been a little more gentle in those situations. I should have, even to the like, I don't think you could do anything right, because like for me, I'm like, man, I should have pushed him more and took him on college tours in 8th grade. Maybe he would have, got into a school that he really would have wanted to get, like all these different things. And then on the flip side, I'm like, especially with admissions this year, like he could have got a 4.2 and still not got into anywhere like that, so I'm kind of glad that we didn't go that route. But, you're always going to feel like I coulda, shoulda, woulda, could have done something differently. But I'm really just trying to accept where we are, be happy. I'm excited for him. I'm ready to watch him grow up. And, I'm hoping that all these scary thoughts for me are just thoughts and not reality. You know, my husband keeps telling me he's still our kid. Where do you think he's going to go for Christmas? And I'm like, I don't know, a girl's house. I don't know, you know? And so it's just like, he's like, you just need to stop being dramatic about it. But man, I just didn't expect it to hit me the way that it has. And, you know, whatever grade your kiddo is in, like, try to enjoy it. I know it's hard. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's been a wild year, but just, you know, remember that it is temporary and that you will get through it.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to end today. And like just that message of enjoy it. It goes by really fast. And so, you know, and I think we get caught up and like we look for the big moments to enjoy. And I think that that's a lot of the fear of, you know, and like disappointment this year, because a lot of the big moments either aren't going to happen or they're going to be different. But it's really the small moments that are the ones that like you'll remember and like think back. And so like I think about like, you know, just those random times where my kids are like super getting along and laughing together. And my husband and I, we like look at each other because like we can hear them like totally cracking up together and like, oh, that's so nice. And you know, those are the times like
absolutely. So, oh, yeah. I didn't cry, but right when you were talking right there, I got a little misty.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, well, we've already teased what we're going to talk about next week. We're going to talk about family communication. So I look forward to talking to all of you about that then. Have a great rest of your week.
You too. Bye, Blasa.
Grace, you absolutely are not alone. We're all in this together.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Take care, everyone.